Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guests are Rupesh Bhambwani and Stephen Kennedy. Rupesh is the founder of Cool Dads Club, which is a social organization to help dads connect globally so they can share experiences and find answers to challenges they face. Stephen Kennedy is the founder of Prepare Foundation and Birthing Dads. Stephen is an expert on preparing and training dads for the birth experience before, during, and after. Rupesh and Stephen, thank you so much both for being on the program.
Lovely to be here, mate.
Thank you, Jonathan. Pleasure to be here.
We like to keep to our tradition as much as possible and always start off with a dad joke. So, Rupesh, what is your dad joke?
So, a turtle is crossing the road when he's mugged by two snails. When the police ask him what happened, the shaken turtle replies, "I don't know. It all happened too fast."
I got one for you. What do you call someone with no body or nose?
What's that? What do you call them?
Well, nobody knows.
Steven, you nailed it, man.
You definitely nailed it. Yes. It's always so fun to start things off with a good laugh. I definitely enjoy it. I know dads listening in definitely enjoy it. Let's get into some really interesting topics today. I want to cover specifically the birth experience for dads globally. So I brought these two experts on the program just to get into a really interesting discussion and maybe understand what's going on in the world and just see where some of the needs are and then just get a little bit of an education and a taste on what resources are available for dads globally. So we're going to start with our first question. What does the support system look like for new dads before, during, and after a birth in Australia and India? And how does it compare with the rest of the world?
Well, Australia is quite similar to a lot of the Western democracies in the world. So included there is the US, UK, Canada, New Zealand, even the Scandinavian countries. But the Scandinavian countries seem to support fathers a lot more effectively than what we do in the US, the UK, and Australia. If you look at the worldwide research into this topic, men are really struggling with the transition to fatherhood and having to attend birth. So in those countries like UK and Canada and Australia, there's like over 90%. In Australia, it's greater than 96% of first-time fathers in general will be at the birth of their children, but they're not really given much preparation that's targeted to them. So they might attend an antenatal education class, but often that is geared necessarily, let's face it, necessarily geared towards the experience of the woman and not really meeting the needs of modern fatherhood. A study in Australia recently found that that's one of the things that it found, that the reproductive health system in Australia was not meeting the needs of modern fatherhood. And so I do think there's a long way to go in supporting men. And I do think if we did that more effectively, we might have better outcomes for families. If we could support fathers, they're better able to support themselves and their families during like the perinatal period. And the perinatal period is the period from conception through to about 1 year old. So that's a really crucial time for the growth and development of children, as we know. And it's a crucial time for couples, new parents. And it's really important that they are prepared and they can meet the demands of new children and also the demands of relating to each other post-birth. And I think that there's some real ground, we need to cover a bit more ground there in preparing parents, particularly first-time parents, for that transition into parenthood, because the relationship challenges are quite significant and they do need to be given a little bit of help to understand that it's going to be tough, and that first year is very difficult, and people need to be, I need to understand that as they go into this, sometimes blind, unfortunately. So that's what I would, answer for your first question there, Jonathan.
Rupesh, what do you think?
If you look at India, the culture that we come from, that is more geared towards staying together as a family. This is something which has been going for generations altogether. Um, Most of the families in India, they live together, which means that as a man, when you get married, you are already staying with your mom and dad. And when your wife comes along and you become a father, many a times the responsibility of looking after the child, or even taking your wife for a hospital visit, is something that the man's parents actually look after. um, that obviously is changing now, because I think I would like to break it down into two parts out here. One is the modern fathers who are wanting to get more involved during the pre-birth, during the birth, and after the birth as well. um, that's also happening because most of the modern dads are now living away from their parents, so they do have to uh, take up the responsibility of getting involved, as much as possible. But what also happens is, again, this is more of a cultural thing, that when someone's wife becomes pregnant, many a times the the wife goes and stays with her mom. So her mom actually starts looking into her, needs for nutrition, doctor's visits, emotional support, so on and so forth. And because of that, many fathers are not present in the journey of the pre-birth. And because of that, a lot of dads also stay disconnected, um, which then impacts how you bond with your children going forward. These roles are obviously changing, because I think, uh, for lack of a better word, India does try to ape the Western civilization, and looks at it as a very cool culture. But I think fundamentally it's important to realize that being present during the pre-birth, the birth, and post the birth is very critical for fathers to actually develop those bonds, because we have to realize that fathers are not the ones who are carrying the baby for 9 months, so they are not emotionally involved. They may be physically present, but the emotional bonding can only happen if you are present with your wife during all these three stages. So it's kind of changing right now, but I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to make sure that dads get involved during all these three stages.
There is a lot of misunderstanding in the bonding process and the need for dads to connect at that level. So that becomes, maybe I'll just use the word, go ahead and use the word excuse, for dads just not to be involved, because they just don't see, they don't see it actually accomplishing anything, because, well, it's just a baby. All it does
Hmm.
is uh is cry and make a mess and whatever. It doesn't really do anything per se. And so we may not see a purpose in that, and
Hmm.
actually spending that time in bonding. But the science is actually starting to come around and prove that it is actually, it does something. There is a bond that gets created early on, and the sooner you start to create that bond, it does it does make things a lot easier for you in the long run. And I personally experienced that with my own boys. Putting the time in early absolutely matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I have this one single message, for all the fathers out there. If you are desirous to bond with your children, if there is an intent and desire, uh, uh, get involved early.
Absolutely. So, what role does culture play in the support or lack of support for dads? Are they receiving less support or more? And is the culture changing for dads? Stephen, you want to go and take that one?
When it comes to culture, I really do believe that that is actually at the crux of the engagement of dads, and it's where the biggest work is to be done. So men, I guess, a lot of my work is trying to convince men that they have a role during the perinatal period, and that role begins at conception. A lot of the guys I kind of, when I first started in this work, they would say to me, "Oh, I don't have a role until the baby's in my arms," right? And I would say, "Actually, no, that couldn't be further from the truth. You've got a role during pregnancy, and you've got a role, during birth. You've got a role during the first year. You've got an ongoing role from conception." And our society, or our culture, tends to negate that role, or is still. I'd like to think of it as we're in a transition zone. So 50 years ago, men started to engage in family life a lot more. And one of the points that really marks a difference there is the attendance at birth. So in the 1970s in Australia, early 1970s, actually, it's the 50th anniversary of a man turning up to birth uh, in Australia. So it's 50 years ago, men started to turn up to birth. And that actually facilitated the beginning of a what I call a dad-evolution. It's a revolution in fatherhood where men, we used to just have to be the protector, the disciplinarian, the provider. We were stoic and strong as fathers. But now, with the job description has actually expanded a lot. We're now there for birth support. We're now there for emotional support. We're there for behaviour regulation. We spend triple the time with our kids as we did in the 70s. But I don't think our society has kind of kept pace with that dad-evolution. And I think that we're in that transition between the unfortunate Homer Simpson kind of trope for fatherhood, as opposed to the David Beckhams or the Chris Hemsworth, the connected and involved dad. So I think culture does play a massive part, and I think that, like I say, culture doesn't change overnight, and it's going to take a little while for the dad-evolution to continue, and our culture to recognise fathers as nurturing and tender and loving, and that at the moment is becoming the norm. And I do think that men, allow that masculine, the dad figure, their masculinity is kind of paused somewhat. There's not that macho ness around when you get a free pass, is what I think, as far as masculinity is concerned, when it comes to being tender and nurturing with your children. So I think it's all a matter of just continuing to plug away and to do our best as fathers, and to put our hands up and say, well, actually, no, I'm not babysitting today. I'm actually caring for my child. And those things that we face in our society, where people will say, oh, you're a good dad. You're at the playground or something, and you're being, looking after them, and you tend to find that there's a little bit of, I guess, dads get a better kind of, they get a lot of praise for the stuff that women might just do routinely. So yeah, we've got a bit of a way to go, but we'll get there.
It is a hard fight, and the stereotype battles still happen here, which is really, really sad, because it puts the U.S. behind the curve. I mean, I've just seen little bits of what's going on in Australia, and Australia already seems way ahead of the curve. They're having discussions already at the government level. It's quite impressive what's going on.
Oh yeah, but we still think that a lot more could be done, because when you look at it from a social impact kind of perspective, and looking at the family's well-being, not having the father involved in those early days for the bonding that we've already discussed and the attachment, that's counterintuitive to family well-being. And I think over the next couple of decades, we're going to look back on this time and think, what, we sent men back to work immediately after birth? That's a bit crazy, isn't it? That's not right. At the moment in Australia, you get 2 weeks, and they're about to actually change that up a lot more. And in the Scandinavian countries, look, they're always really ahead of the curve when it comes to social issues. Fathers and mothers get
Hmm.
a similar amount. They don't define a primary carer, which is what has just been removed here. So, in Australia, we always had a primary carer, which often would be the woman, the birthing person. Whereas, now they've removed that. And in the Scandinavian countries, they've had that removed for quite a while. So it doesn't actually matter who's looking after the child, they get the leave. So it could be the father or the mother. And I think that that's a really progressive attitude, going forward. If men want to put their hand up to do those, the early caring role.
Moms seem to be very connected with other moms socially. This not only applies locally, but globally as well. I would argue that they're far more connected with each other than dads are with other dads. Why is this, and why would it be so important for dads to be just as connected?
I think what I've noticed with men is at the moment, and again, this is another transition, but at the moment we parent in silos, so we don't necessarily, the man who lives next door might have a toddler, and you've got a toddler, but your toddler has tantrums about X, Y, and Z, and you think that it's your fault or that it's the toddler's fault, when in fact the neighbour's kid is having tantrums about X, Y, and Z as well, but you just don't have the language
Hmm.
or the freedom to be able to discuss that just yet. It is happening online. I've found that there's some groups online that are starting to reach out and have meaningful conversations about caring for children and stuff. But there is also this kind of stoic nature of men, which is kind of inherent, that you know we're well known to not ask for directions. Does anyone know that one? Like you're lost.
Yeah.
Thank God for Google, right? We never get lost now, right? But back in the
Yeah,
past,
that's
it's
me.
like you're sitting there and your wife's saying, "Let's just pull over. I'll ask this person for directions." No, I'm not pulling over. No, that kind of thing. So look, I think there's a bit of that in there too, and it's like we're just going to blaze this trail because I want to do this myself. I want to make sure, I do think that that's the detriment to our children sometimes because they're not getting the full wisdom of men, and that's why my work is about defining the role of dads right in that beginning time, so that they can start to share wisdom amongst each other, because it is really important for them to get connected, so that we can actually start really having conversations about the things that matter to the growth and development of children. And that's another de-stressor. If you know that the guy next door is managing tantrums over X, Y, and Z, there's a big relief in that, and you'll take a little bit of solace to just kind of say, oh, right, that's actually just a universal human experience. It's not just my fault or my child's fault. So that's how important it is for guys to begin to have those conversations. And again, I think that will come. It will come.
Rupesh, what do you think?
If you look at, there are a lot of communities out there which get moms to engage with each other, online, offline, both. Um, and I have seen some of those communities, because my wife is obviously part of some of these moms groups out there. These are non-judgmental platforms, right, where no mom judges another mom for whatever that has happened to them or whatever they're going through. Dads are connected socially, but what happens is they don't do the dad talk. It's very rare that you will find two people sitting down for a dinner and talking about their children or their domestic issues, or how to raise
Mm-hmm.
children. They may catch up for a beer as well, they may play sports, but the dad talk does not happen. They do catch up socially. So I think the kind of fundamental problem lies in, again, the generational baggage that dads carry with them, that I'm not supposed to talk about my children and their development because my dad never did that. And if you talk about children and the issues and the development challenges, you may be seen as a weaker sex. So the dad talk does not happen because of a lot of these uh, conditioned messages that have infiltrated in their minds from many years ago. That's why I think it's so important to actually create and enrich these dad communities, where people can actually share with each other their learnings, their experiences. As Stephen said, there's a lot of wisdom out there. um, you know but those platforms need to be non-judgmental. Those platforms need to be free flowing, and we are seeing the same thing happening in the Cool Dads Club that I run out here in India. That uh, because dads, when they share something, nobody's making a joke out of it. Nobody's trying to laugh it off. Everything is taken on a face value, and dads are feeling far more comfortable to open up and share things which they would otherwise not do with even their closest buddies, even though they know them for many years. So having that non-judgmental platform which provides comfort to dads, I think is the first step where dads can actually do the talk.
How can dads listening get a hold of you and learn more about what you are both doing?
Well, I've got a couple of websites. The ones, so I run a registered charity here in Australia called the Prepare Foundation, and I also run a social enterprise called Birthing Dads. So the Prepare Foundation has a website, www.prepare.org.au, and Birthing Dads, and we're just about to release I think it's actually probably the world's most comprehensive suite of resources for first-time fathers to help them understand, what's coming. And that can be found on www.birthingdads.com.au. On social media, I'm at Birthing Dads and also at Prepare Foundation on Instagram, and I'm also on Facebook with Birthing Dads. And you can also look me up on LinkedIn as well. Stephen Kennedy is my name, and love to connect with anyone and everyone.
Rupesh, what about you?
So we as a community of Cool Dads Club are active on Facebook. We are active on LinkedIn. At both the places, dads can look up for Cool Dads Club, and if they want to join the WhatsApp platform as well, where most of the dads engage on a daily basis, you could get a link from either the LinkedIn page or the Facebook page, and you could join the WhatsApp group as well from there.
I'm also going to make things easy as well. So if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com, and you go to this episode and you go to the episode description, below the description, I will place all the links that you just heard. So it'll all be in one place and you can just click on it and it'll take you to right to where you're trying to go. As we wrap up, what is your challenge for dads?
I think dads should actually start, cracking more jokes for their kids. I think that's something where a lot of dads are quite poor at it. I have been poor as well, but I'm trying to pick up a little bit now.
If you go to the Cool Dads Club, Rupesh is a regular for dad jokes. So if you need a really good laugh for the day to get you going, or if you need a good dad joke to go tell your kids, that is a great source to get some really good ones. I love that page.
Yeah.
I've got a challenge for the dads out there too. Maybe it's a two-pronged challenge. I think as dads, as men, we often want to solve the problem. So I want to say to them, with your small children, try and let them solve the problem. So don't step in and say, this is how you turn the screw, or this is what you do next, or this is. Hold off until they're struggling, and then offer some help if they put their hand up and say, "Oh, can you help me, Daddy?" I think that's a key one for me. And also with your partner, sometimes just listen. You don't always have to solve all the problems of the world. What I've found is sometimes just listening and just saying, "All right, do you want me to do anything about it?" Or instead of actually jumping to action and trying to solve it, because men, everyone gets a hormonal reward when we solve someone's problem. But I think we got to resist that temptation sometimes. So that's.
Stephen, I think I'm going to take up on that challenge because that's an issue that I face. I do exactly the same with my wife. I just jump to solve the problems, and many times she just comes back and says, "You know what? Just listen to me. I don't want you solving problems all the time."
I've been guilty of that too. I've done the exact same thing. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And yeah, my wife's literally told me like that sometimes she just wants me to just listen. And so
we think we know all the answers, don't we, sometimes?
And then the advice you gave about letting your children sometimes figure it out. Again, it goes against the grain of what we want to do in our knee-jerk reaction. But man, that actually, if we can resist that urge, it makes a lot of sense. If we let them try to figure it out, we're actually teaching them problem-solving skills sometimes by not doing anything.
That's right. They have to pile on those neurons, especially when they're really young. They're piling on neuroconnections constantly, thousands per second. And if you can just resist, solving the little issue, the little problem, let them do it, then their brain is functioning more effectively. And I think that's really positive for everyone.
Well, we are running out of time, but it has been a wonderful discussion, a lot of fun. So, Stephen, Rupesh, thank you both for taking the time to come on the Fatherhood Challenge.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for tuning in so late, mate. We did this across 3 continents, so well done to you for finding an applicable time.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure. I think it is so much fun. And I think it is very enriching to have these conversations, not just for us who are on your show, but also I think for the dads out there who are looking at direction, who are looking at advice. I think the work that you're doing in this space is quite commendable. And the fact that you are still up at, I think it's 4 a.m. out there in the US right now, it's actually quite something. So great one, Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.